This episode is sponsored by the IoT job site, the world's only dedicated space for applying for and advertising IoT vacancies across the world. Register now for job alerts or get in touch via let's talk at theiotjobsite.com.
Welcome back to the IoT podcast show. As always, I'm your host, Tom White. Today I'm joined by Rob Hollands. Rob is the Managing Director at SharpEnd. SharpEnd is a full-service strategy, creative content and analytics company moving brands closer than ever to consumers, connecting the real world via IoT. Before we get into it, guys, can you do me a favour? Can you like, comment and subscribe to the show? It means you'll get notified when there's a new episode. Rob, welcome to the IoT podcast show.
Hey Tom, thank you very much for having me. Looking forward to it.
Likewise. Rob, fantastic to have you here. For our viewers then, so this is Rob Hollands from SharpEnd. Could you explain a little bit about your business, how you got into IoT and what it is you do?
For sure. Yeah, so kicking off with SharpEnd then. SharpEnd set up back in 2015. And you'll probably remember, and I'm sure some of your listeners and viewers will, IoT was a real buzzword at the time, and particularly amongst brands and marketeers who we look to support. And we really set about to try and demystify this IoT space and translate it really for brands and tell them how they might be able to use it to connect with their consumers.
So set up in 2015. Absolutely, yeah. So big buzzword back then, lots of people talking about, around this time, 500 billion devices or whatever magical massive number.
You remember it, yeah.
Yeah. So interesting, actually, to talk about that. So the IoT podcast, one of its main missions and part of its mission statement really is to demystify what IoT is to the man on the street, right? So love the fact that SharpEnd was conceived to do that, and so you set up the business, MD, and tell me a bit about your journey from here on in.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and exactly as you say it. Whereas demystifying it for the man on the street, we set about to do that same thing for brands and then consumers via those brands. So exactly that. I had an interesting background. I started off in slightly more traditional marketing, and then very quickly capitalised on the digital space during the dot-com boom, and got into what was really at the time a group of the first digital agencies. Back in 2002 to 2006, co-founded an agency there with a friend, which we set up, ran for a number of years, called Untitled Digital Agency, and then sold it to a US group. And I guess that's where this journey started, is the US group that we sold it to was very much focused on brand design and packaging. And different business, but they were looking to digitalize their business at the time. And I was absolutely blown away about the scale of packaging and the opportunity there. And we spent a number of years trying to look at how we could, modernize, digitalize what is a very traditional medium. And then in about 2017-18, I started seeing another guy out there that was talking about kind of similar things in the IoT space, and that was a guy called Cam Worth, who had set up SharpEnd, and we very quickly realised, we were on a similar mission. Him with a startup, me now in a much bigger corporate, and we realised we'd be stronger and better together. And that's been the last few years. The business has gone from strength to strength, and we're doing some fantastic things.
Oh, amazing! Yeah, it's great to hear that, and an interesting background. I mean, a lot of the people that we have on the show come from either a technical engineering background, move up into tech positions or sales as such. But nice to see you coming from a slightly different angle with the marketing. And perhaps that's why SharpEnd's visuals are so on point, and the brand story and what that is. And for anyone that hasn't seen it, check out the website. It's really, really good, and a bit of a showcase for what good websites should look like. You've touched on there, Rob, in regards to connected packaging. So this is probably the first time that we've had someone on the show talking about connected packaging. Just to delve into that a bit more deeper, can you explain why connected packaging is important and the capabilities and technologies used within it.
Yeah, love to. I often, when I'm talking about these things, and this, I mentioned it, the kind of just being blown away by the scale of packaging. When you think about the Internet of Things space, and you look at the number of human beings on the planet, look at the number of households, look at the number of cars, you're all in the billions, which is absolutely incredible. You start to see that number ramp up when you look at apparel and clothing, 80 billion items of clothing in our lives at any one time. The thing that massively excites me about packaging is it's not the billions or millions, it's trillions. They reckon there's 5 to 10 trillion pieces of packaging in our lives at any one time. And I've always been blown away by that as an opportunity. If we could connect, even a small percentage of that trillions and trillions of pieces of packaging via lots of different technologies, but if we could connect just a small percent, what a huge opportunity to reach consumers, to add value into people's lives, to build the IoT across trillions of things. So that's been one of the things that's really excited me about packaging. When we talk about the technologies, we're really agnostic in this kind of space as to what we would tell a client. It's based on what problem are we trying to solve, what's the creative opportunity, and then we reach the technology solution. But there's some common ones. You'll know QR codes on pack is a really great way to connect with consumers, pretty low tech. We've really pioneered the connected packaging space with NFC, near field communications, the ability to tap rather than scan. And increasingly, as the technology gets better, we're doing a lot more in the kind of computer vision or image recognition or product recognition space. And then you see that leading on to things like augmented reality or kind of more VR-based experiences. They're probably the key pieces of tech, but other things like Bluetooth. There's lots of ways that you can engage with consumers via the packaging.
Yeah, I mean it's really interesting how so much technology can be built into packaging. In fact, I'm telling a lie. I said at the start of that we haven't had anyone on about connected packaging, but we did have Hema Mukamala from Pelion on, who mentioned briefly, and I vividly remember it because I was blown away at the time, about the adhesive tape, right, to secure boxes, actually having microchips and a circuit board embedded within that tape is something that they're looking at and working on, which is crazy, right? But fantastic in terms of its advantages. Obvious benefits I can think about here is tracking, asset monitoring, etc. Can you talk about some of the benefits that brands can have when it comes to connected packaging, Rob?
Definitely, yeah. And you touched on one of them, actually, probably the one that we hear a lot initially, around kind of authentication or knowing whether someone's done something or interacted with a product, whether that's through a smart closure on a wines and spirits bottle, or the tape that you were talking about there. Truthfully, a lot of the areas we're exploring are around consumer experiences and brands seeing this as a way to deliver stuff they might be delivering somewhere else directly with the consumer. So I tap or I scan or I interact with a product for a brilliant brand experience. And storytelling, or to unlock loyalty or rewards, or potentially to see things like that product's journey through the supply chain, or things like authentication. So brand experience is definitely a big area for us. We're seeing some kind of interesting growth areas come. Packaging as a medium has traditionally been pretty inaccessible. If you're visually impaired or suffer from some other disability, packaging is not particularly accessible. And we're seeing quite a lot of tech innovation in the space to look at how can I interact with that pack to have a more accessible experience, or to actually be able to have an experience that I wouldn't have been able to have before. There is a massive, we talk about it a lot, there is a massive data opportunity for brands. And this is across the IoT space. Knowing who's buying and using your product, knowing where and when they're interacting with it, is really valuable data. And SharpEnd, kind of, I should have said at the start really, but SharpEnd kind of splits into two businesses. One very kind of agency orientated, consultative, what would compel someone to interact with something, and then what's the brilliant experience when they do. And then the other part of the business, which we call is a platform called the IO.TT, and that's all about issuing identities and managing what happens when someone does interact. And then the reason I touch on it is then managing all of that great data that you can unlock if you can connect your products.
Yeah, I mean it's truly fascinating and almost bewildering, the amount of data that can be harnessed through IoT devices in general, let alone trillions of packages. Just to go back one step, you mentioned about computer vision and augmented reality. I'd be curious to know what advancements are being made in the connected packaging industry around that, because obviously at the moment we have the QR codes, we have some of this technology readily accessible. Where do you see it going with computer vision and AR, Rob?
It's a really good question. There, when you're talking to brands or consumers, in fact, and you'll know it yourself, AR, augmented reality, has tended to be somewhat kind of a novelty-based experience today. And I think one of the places AR is starting to move is actually into valuable experiences and kind of genuine value exchange, rather than just a small disposable piece of fun. That piece of fun can be great, but it costs a lot of money. It takes a lot of time for something that's downloaded or experienced once. Web AR has helped massively. The fact that this is now appless, and we're constantly trying to push for appless experiences. I think the experiences will get better, they'll be deeper, they'll be more meaningful for augmented reality. We still have the real challenge that a lot of what we try and do is understand that exact product that you're interacting with. Ideally the individual product itself, but at least a kind of size or SKU or something like that. The challenge we do have, and I think this will improve massively with something like computer vision or image recognition, is I can tell you it's a pair of Levi's or a Yeo Valley yogurt. I might not be able to tell you which exact product it is or the exact size or something like that. And I think that technology will get better. Still, a lot of what we want to know is we want to be knowing that consumers interacting with that exact product. And that's probably one of the limitations at the minute of AR or computer vision.
Yeah. I mean, the advantages there of knowing, what people are buying as opposed to something else down to the actual individual product inherently is going to have lots of advantages. But, work in progress, right? You mentioned a couple of brands there. Keen to touch on that a little bit more. So, likes of Levi, MAC Cosmetics are here as well, and obviously closer to home, Yeo Valley, companies that you're working with at the moment. Can you talk a little bit more about those projects and how SharpEnd's working with them?
Yeah, definitely. Yeo Valley, obviously, great kind of British institution. In some other markets we're aware of it, but big dairy company. And we've worked with them. The reason they're really interesting is, again, back to that scale of packaged products. They ship millions and millions of yogurt products into the market each year. We've used very simple technology in QR. Obviously, QR is one of those things that has come to market, in the Western world. QRs have been less popular up until a couple of years ago, and then we've seen, Apple devices natively scanning via the camera view, and obviously QR around the pandemic has certainly become a technology that we're much more aware of. But in terms of Yeo Valley, we've connected all of their products with QR down to individual SKU level, and we're delivering their Put Nature First platform, which is a really nice kind of sustainability initiative, so the consumer can take all of that experience content. We'll deliver you timed recipes based on your location, based on the time of day of interaction. So some lovely brand storytelling, brand building, consumer engagement work. But we've also removed, which I quite like, is we've removed a big friction point. Slightly dull use case, but it's a good one nonetheless. That it was 54 taps on your mobile device to enter their loyalty code. And this is under the lid, alphanumeric code underneath there, and it took you 54 taps on a phone to enter that code in uppercase, lowercase, special characters, all of that good stuff. We've been able to remove that with a single scan of a QR code and instantly load what is called Yokens into your Yokens wallet. And I love things like that, looking at how this connected technology can make consumers' lives easier, make it more meaningful, make it more enjoyable in terms of the experience. That's a great example of doing that.
Yeah, well, that's a massive shift, isn't it? I wouldn't bother, and I would imagine a lot of other people typing in a code like that. You just wouldn't have the time, right? Especially on a throwaway item like a yogurt pop. The instant reaction is to throw it in the bin. You've got 3 seconds to take a picture of a QR code, haven't you? Let alone keep it, wash it, and then type in the code.
For definite. Yeah, so let's at least make it easy for people to engage. And then, of course, we see a big increase in the number of engagements. That's a huge data opportunity for the brand, and all of the great stuff that then comes with that.
Curious as to why you think QR codes were less picked up in Western society than they were perhaps elsewhere in the world. Any reasons for that? Any research or any... why were we slightly slower to adoption on that?
Well, do you know, this relates to QR codes and actually any of the tech solutions that we could talk about in this IoT space. One of my instincts, and being in the industry long enough to kind of see it happen, was we brands in particular were guilty of seeing a technology pretty low cost and simple to implement, and delivering some pretty awful use cases. And there's great examples back in 2010 time, I guess, of QR codes out there on billboards that were impossible to scan, or on a Marmite pack that then took you through to a Unilever.com website and delivered a horrific experience. It wasn't mobile optimized, totally irrelevant to the consumer. So I think in these markets, we damaged ourselves a bit by racing at the technology without really thinking about the reason and the creative experience and what solution we're solving. And you can apply that to lots of things. So I think that was one of the challenges. Device adoption is a huge one. Apple, really dominant device in these markets, didn't really have any kind of favourable lens on QR codes. The moment, I think it's 2018, Apple brought them natively into the swipe on the camera.
I remember that, yeah. I remember you had to download an app and it was just inconvenient, wasn't it?
Inconvenient, and you remember those apps, they were free, but they had awful advertising in there, probably a link to some dodgy site. It was all a horrible user experience. So I think that was one of the big challenges, as it is with all of these technology things. And we've seen it with NFC as well, as the device manufacturers continuously start to unlock the tech. First off, they make it so it's in the device, then they start to unlock it so you can use it natively, then it ships with it activated. All of a sudden, we've got a much more captive audience, and we've got less friction points and drop-off points. So we see adoption a lot faster, and the brands are behaving better. If you scan a QR code on a pack of Marmite now, it will deliver you an experience that's worth scanning for.
Yeah, and what a phrase that is, an experience worth scanning for, right? And I think that's the whole point, isn't it? Otherwise, you're not going to do it, or if you do it once, you're certainly not going to do it again. And you kind of, one would imagine you want people to keep scanning, right? To keep doing this, to go back, and for it not to be a one-hit wonder.
Definitely. We talk really early on is that why would anyone scan, tap, interact, hold it in front of a camera or a screen? Why would anyone do that? What's the thing that's going to compel them to do it? And then you're exactly right. What makes them go back to it and do it again and again?
Mm-hmm. Where are we going with connected packaging? So in terms of trends, what have you seen recently? We touched on it earlier with Bluetooth, NFC, perhaps RFID, other forms of connectivity. Where do you see the market shifting outside of QR codes, perhaps, Rob?
Well, I think 2021, we've gone out of it as a real arrival year for this technology. And you won't see all of that in market, but I can tell you the Unilevers of the world, the P&Gs, the General Mills, these big holding companies with lots of brands below them have all made big moves into this space, and we'll see that continuously hit the market this year. So it's out there. We're going to set a consumer expectation now that your product, whatever it is, whatever technology, there's going to be an expectation that it starts to become connected with a meaningful reason to connect. So I think that's fantastic. We've set the baseline now. The technology's there. The devices are ready to interact. Consumer awareness of the technology has reached it, and brands are doing good stuff with it. That's fantastic. For me, 2022 is all the buzzwords that we've heard in the last 3 weeks as we've entered it around the kind of metaverse, NFTs, Web3. I think we're going to see this year some really great stuff around how connected packaging can play a role in that world, and it's perfect for it. You think it's such a physical thing, the pack or the product itself. Increasingly, we're looking at ways we can deliver digital things, that garment in Roblox or in that metaverse space. But I think we're going to see a great thing around how do my physical products become digitalized to live both with me in my physical world and in my digital world, and the role of NFTs on packs or products. I think it'll be really exciting, connected packaging's role in this kind of Web3 world, Web 3.0 world.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you've opened the hornet's nest there for me, right? I only because of NFTs. I think of NFTs at the moment as really embryonic. You've got basically kids flipping JPEGs at the moment, right? You're making lots of money, but it's like, where is this going to go? And I think in a primary sense, for 100 years, you were able to buy something and it wasn't on the blockchain. Now it is. So everything that you buy, everything that you access is probably going to have a record of it on a digital ledger somewhere. What does this mean for connected packaging? You scan something, do you get an NFT for that? Most NFTs at the moment are a gateway into something else. Do you get a ticket? Do you get entered into a draw? So on and so forth. So that's for me is really interesting. I'd love to see the developments.
Yeah.
One thing that I'm always keen on, and the things that we always come back to on the podcast, is privacy and security. So there's a lot of data here. We've spoken about how that they're using a Yeo Valley yogurt, but you don't know which yogurt. Eventually, you're going to know which yogurt they're eating and at what time, and potentially where they are. How do we ensure that the data is being used in a meaningful and the right way? And is this a concern, or is this something that you advise clients on as well?
Hugely, and I think it's one of the, outside of the wonderful, exciting things that will happen over the next 12 months. I think that's one of the areas across everything within the IoT space. You said it right. It's a vast amount of data, and it's really personal data. Where and when I'm using my product, what products I'm buying across categories as well. It's something we advise clients on. From when we're developing the first experience, any data that we're capturing, we're looking for a genuine reason why we're capturing that data and potentially using it to do something. You usually optimize or enhance the experience for the customer. So that's one of the first things we do. But I think, as an industry, and it's an area we're looking into, there will need to be some work done to kind of self-regulate all around transparency and show, if we're tracking your product interactions across all of these spaces and your connections in the home and your cars and all of these other areas, how can we deliver all of that data to you and be really transparent about it? And I've not got the answer now, but it's something we're looking at solving, certainly on a kind of smaller level on the experiences we're building. But I think it transcends that. If you're interacting in a retail space, if you're then connecting with a product on the go, if you're then back in your home with a smart device interacting with that product, that's a lot of different ecosystems, touch points, data points. How can we put a layer in that takes all of that data and can show you what's being captured where and let you manage those settings? But that's a problem to be solved.
Yeah. A big problem, an important one. A lot of people talk about secure by design, so the original principles of it built upwards, which is interesting. The other element here as well, and I'm just kind of thinking out loud, is the sustainability piece. So, funnily enough, actually, it's January, so I'm meal prepping, right? So I'm having my meals delivered to me. I always sort of start the new year afresh, and I got a box the other day, and And I was really surprised because on the front it said 3 easy steps to send this back to us. And I just thought, well, you don't see that often. And it was a pretty good box. It was kind of sturdy as boxes go anyway, right? And I think the combination of sustainability in packaging may be mixed with energy harvesting as well. So the fact that, if we're running circuit boards or something in there, that they don't need to be powered, or that, well, they don't need to be a replaceable power source, right?
Yeah.
So that's an interesting dynamic as well in terms of the sustainability of this, and perhaps that's something that you could offer, or I'm just thinking out loud, maybe to your brands and to your customers about getting some of this packaging back for reuse. Is this ever come up in conversations in the past?
It does, yeah. We're doing a lot of work with Levi's in this space. And
right.
One of the observations there is a lot of the time, the reason that, we're all a bit lazy, to be honest, and we try and get it in the right recycle bin and, do good things with our products. If we add an identity or digitalize that product, take a fashion garment, for example, and we see it travel through the supply chain, arrive in the consumer's life. If that product exists somewhere on a blockchain, wherever it exists, but it's digitalized, we ascribe some form of ownership to it. And then when it comes to its end of life, and this is something we're doing brilliantly with Levi's, we're connecting their garments. We're also allowing consumers to return them to Levi's stores when they've reached the end of their life, and via computer vision, kind of check them into what we call a donation wall and donate them back in return for loyalty points. And there's definitely something, it's like your box example. If you digitalize something, make it super easy, but somehow then we've got some ownership and proof of ownership, which then makes us behave good when it comes to that product's end of life or the packaging's end of life or whatever it is. So I think that's a really important area. And yeah, another area where there's definitely a growing kind of groundswell of briefs around how do we, through connected packaging, through connected products, how can we drive more sustainable behaviours or be a more sustainable business?
Yeah, that's fantastic. I never knew that story with Levi's. I mean, that's great, isn't it? That you can bring in some old jeans and you get loyalty points. It has to be worthwhile, doesn't it? Otherwise you're not going to bother taking the trip to the store, given the fact that most purchases are done online. To have to go back to the store, you're going to have something fairly worthwhile to be able to do that. But it's really nice to see in the combat against fast fashion, which is a bit of an issue, right? In general, and a big issue that we need to combat. It's always staggering. So when we have people on and we talk about particular areas within IoT, because it's so expansive, you really just kind of uncover more and more things and more areas. And in connected packaging in general is huge. I mean, you really, once you look into it, you can really see so many different possibilities. It's absolutely great.
Most definitely. And once you connect the packaging and the products, how it then lives within the connected home, you can start to understand which products have I got in my cupboard, deliver different experiences based on that, could help you with your kind of meal planning at the start of each year and all of that stuff. Yeah, so great opportunities.
Yeah, fantastic. So where are things going for SharpEnds this year? Obviously, you spoke about, we've spoken about a lot. So we've got data, privacy, different forms of connectivity. Any major things on the horizon you want to share today?
We're focusing on a lot of those areas that we've already talked about and scaling those things up. We've been a kind of very UK, European centric business. We've seen a lot of growth outside of Europe over the last couple of years, and we'll launch our kind of outpost in the States this year, which will be super exciting.
Fantastic.
We're doing a lot of work with Estee Lauder companies. You mentioned MAC Cosmetics out there, which is superb. We did, during the lockdown, come up with a crazy initiative, which we call Corner Shop, which was we wanted to put some proof into kind of this connected retail space and showing how the product can live both in a store, at home, in a connected environment. We launched the first of those, which is down in Shoreditch, called Corner Shop. So it's a fully connected retail space with all sorts of fantastic innovations in there. connected packaging sitting at the core. And we're just looking at how we can translate that into the US, maybe as a mum and pop store. But we're looking at that, and that's a really exciting initiative.
Oh, wow.
Doing something good for the industry as well, to say, what's the future of retail, and how can we demonstrate some of the fantastic things that are going to help retailers over the next few years.
Fantastic, that's great. Incorporating in Delaware in the States, Rob?
Yeah. Could well be.
Yeah, the classic Delaware. Fantastic. I mean, really, really interesting. Where can people find out more about the business? Social media, etc. Do you want to share some links now?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're on LinkedIn. Connect with any of the team there. Main source of everything, some great case studies as well as on our website, SharpEnd.com. So definitely have a look there, and give us a shout. Particularly, we're keen to collaborate. We want to move the industry forward. So any partnerships in the space, and then definitely any clients that have listened and need some help understanding how the IoT can support their brands, we'd love to chat.
Excellent. Fantastic. Rob, so come to the end of the show today. New feature on the podcast. Well, I say a new feature, although this is the third time I've said it, so I'm not sure if it's new anymore, but I'll say it again. So the new feature on the podcast, we're asking our previous guest to think of a question for the upcoming guest. So our previous guest was Oliver Tucker, who's the CEO of Wireless Logic. And he asked this question, and I'll read it verbatim to the best of my ability. With the wider availability of high-speed data networks and processing of data at the edge, further opening up video image recognition applications, what innovative use cases for this are you seeing or predicting? So I think we touched on this a little bit, but it'd be useful to answer Oliver's question then.
We've touched on this, and we have. One of the things when we start to talk to brands about connected packaging, the big challenge always comes from it's logistically. There's some supply chain considerations. How do I get codes on my pack? How do I incorporate and then encode NFC tags if I build it into my product? And a lot of clients are very quick to arrive at wouldn't it just be brilliant if I could point and it do it all without changing my packaging? That's been, the technology hasn't been there, the latency, the challenges, and I think that's one of the things that is coming now. Still with the barrier that we talked about, that you might not know that individual product, but I think we'll see vast improvements there. The work that we're doing with Levi's, I mean, it is a magical experience for the average consumer, or for anyone that hasn't kind of played with that technology, to be able to take your Levi's into a store and a beautifully designed kind of visual wall and hold up the back patch or any product carrying one of the Levi's back patches, and it recognize that back patch, it understand which product you're holding, and then it deliver you a reward and a wonderful experience based on that. That type of stuff is fantastic for consumers. So I think we'll see more of things like that. We're obviously we're doing some work in our corner shop space as well, with the kind of checkout and go, fully contactless checkout type of things, using really high-tech computer vision to understand who's picking and taking which item. We'll see progress there for sure.
Fantastic. Sorry, just quickly, corner shop, is there a link to that off the main website?
There is. Yeah, go and check it out. And we did a kind of 2-month pop-up just before Christmas of opening the space. We've closed for a month now whilst we reset some of the tech and put some new innovations in. And then kind of late February onwards, that space will be back open pretty much 9 till 5, Monday to Friday, for people to drop in and come and experience some of the things there. All of your listeners and viewers will be very welcome to pop down.
Excellent. On that wonderful note, Rob, thank you so much. Been really insightful today. Been great having you on the show.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tom. Been great to talk.
And as always, guys, you can find more about the IoT podcast on LinkedIn and Twitter, and check out our website, theiotpodcast.com, where you can watch all the previous episodes which are hosted on YouTube. It would be great to know your thoughts on IoT and connected packaging, so please do get involved in the conversation. And until next time, cheers.